Craig, Greg, welcome to you both. Thanks for joining us for the episode number 5 of the Hayylo Insights webinar.
Thanks, Simon. Happy to be here.
Likewise.
Awesome. And for everybody just joining, look, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us today. We were just having a chat before this kicked off, just around the escalating situation around the country, and we know, providers and people all over the country are currently, especially in the sector, are responding to the lockdowns and the escalating situation. And from the chats that I've had with a few groups today, we know everyone's really busy, kind of responding to what's going on out there. So for those of you that are joining us, thank you so much for stopping in. And for those of you that can't be here, we'll get the recording out to you afterwards. But just really excited to dig into this conversation today, guys. So we'll get straight into it. To set the scene a little bit, what we've been talking about as we lead up to this chat is really the concept around, delivering person-centered care. We know it's a very, strong topic at the moment in the sector. And, there's what we've defined in our little lead into this is that there's a hidden and really kind of crucial component that underpins its viability, which is interoperability, and something that I know we at Hayylo have focused on, really since our inception. And I know, Craig, from our conversations and interactions with you and the Civica CareLink team over the years, you've been another group that's really quite open and has been a forward thinker in the space of interoperability. And I thought that would be a cool place to start today, Craig, is, why is that? And really what has that journey been like for you guys, at Civica CareLink over your time in the sector?
Thanks, Simon. It's been an interesting journey, actually, because we've always been an API first organisation. So if that option is available, we've always taken it. And a good example is DEX. You can do flat files into DEX, or you can do APIs. We chose to go APIs. And one of the key reasons is real time. You get real time validation on your data, and it just saves our customers a lot of time. They don't have that bank up at the end of month or end of fortnight or anything like that, trying to resolve things. So we've always been API first, but the government's been and the government drives a lot of our market. The funding, it's omnipresent in our market. So they drive a lot of things. They've had a couple of cracks at things along the way, but in general, they've fallen back to the flat file whenever it got all too hard. So, but I must say now, with DEX, with NDIS, with Medicare online, they're all now in that API space. They're all about interoperability, and it's all about sharing data.
Yeah, awesome. And what about, and Greg, I'll throw to you in a second, but what about working with this? So I know CareLink and Hayylo have a great integration partnership, that we have. And I know you guys have a few others as well with other groups out there. What about with vendors and that side of the coin for you guys? That strategy as far as CareLink's concerned.
Is that Greg's question? Or,
Oh no, just for you there, Craig. Like just working with other groups. It's something that we're seeing more of now is vendors starting to plug in together to see the opportunities for that movement of data. I know you guys have got a couple of groups that you work with in that space.
We do, and it's one of the reasons why we chose to have a partnership with Hayylo. And this is not an ad here. This is because we did look at the market, and we did, and because we were going down that API first approach. And you guys came to the table with your APIs, with the ability to really have the systems integrated properly, and that was what really sold us at the end of the day. You guys also knew what you were doing. There's a lot of people in the market that don't necessarily understand the market. You understand the market, but that technology piece around the interoperability was a real seller for us. And if the less our customers have to rekey and have to do their own integration, because we provide it as a packaged up interoperability for our customers, it just makes it easy for them. And where there's gaps, you guys were willing to fill the gaps in terms of API gaps. So all those sorts of things really helped us come to the decision to partner with Hayylo. But you're not the only ones. Yes, we do work with other products, ERPs and various other systems. And once again, if we can offer that level of interoperability, that helps us choose our partners that we go with.
Yeah, love that. And we'll get into some, I'm really kind of interested to dig a little bit into, the infrastructure conversation today. So, talking a little bit about, the move to cloud that we're seeing across the sector and maybe some of the reasons why we've struggled as a sector to do that. But before we do, what about you, Greg, as far as your perspective, this is interoperability or integration. I remember the late nights and deep conversations that we had around this space in the early days of Hayylo. How do you think about this stuff? Where would you like to kick off today?
Yeah, so first of all, I think extending on what Craig was talking about, Craig, thank you for thinking about it in that way. And it was actually true, back to what you said, Simon, in the early days when we first started, which is back in 2016 now, we knew we were a part of a whole system. We knew we were a part of a solution to a very, very complex problem that requires a lot of different platforms to kind of feed in together to solve. And at the core of all of that was, person-centered approach. We said, how do we make sure that the people that are receiving services, with dignity and respect, and it kind of revolves around them, it involves them. And what we quickly saw was lots of data in different places, right? And that was we made a decision, and because we didn't really know a lot back then, to be honest, we made a decision at the early days to dig in and say that, we need to seamlessly integrate this information together. But the purpose of all of it was to really empower people. Like, that's how I think we came at it. And, Craig, you were just talking about it then. You are empowering those users to not shift and move all those flat files. You're empowering them with the real-time feedback from an API, so they don't, all those, if there's reconciliation events that happen or feedback that happens from decks or whatever the reporting body is, that can happen faster. We can pick up data inaccuracies earlier, and then it takes us less time to achieve that result. The core about when we think about successful interoperability, it's always about how do we empower those users to do whatever it is that they're doing more efficiently, less steps, more securely, more robustly. We don't want them rekeying things and re-entering things. So from my side, we've birthed Hayylo into the world of interoperability. But I think as a segue to the next topic, it was when we started, the tools that exist today, the tools, Craig, that you're talking about, the APIs of the world, they looked a little bit different back then. They weren't as feature rich, So maybe Craig, how is your team kind of thinking about well, more so you've got your customers and they've got their products and they're using those products are integrated through your teams. As we continue moving into the future with new integrations or abilities from government, new abilities from vendors and different sides, what do you see as an outcome for your customers, and where do you think that where would you like to see the biggest value come from for them from the integrations?
So yeah, that's a great question. And the key thing I think is that everyone now is choosing systems that provide openness. If they're not an open system, you basically struck off the list. So that's a key drive for our customers. And one of the things I want to pick up on what you were saying there before too, Greg, about the person-centered care and lots of things. Real-time data, I would have thought, is the key driver to a proper person-centered care approach. So that's where this interoperability is a key driver to person-centered care. So our customers are looking for open systems. They don't want to necessarily have that. And we've come from an era, and we've been around for a fair while now, where it used to be that enterprise type view. things. And what I mean by enterprise, one system does everything. And that the old Oracle view, the old SAP view, and all that sort of thing, that's gone. And yes, these things are cyclical, and it could come back again at some stage, but it's seen as very old world, and especially because products like your product are niche products that are really good at what they do, and they don't want SAP, or they don't want even Civica to build something out that is going to be inferior to a product that's really good out in the market that can be plugged in, and then that's what our customers, that's driving our customers.
Yeah, we see the same thing, Craig. If you think about it, we're starting to now see more and more customers integrate their products more and more. And some part of me thinks about more and more the transition to cloud. So, and one thing that I wanted to note that always comes up as a question, it came up as a question in a meeting earlier today, does our platform need to be cloud-based for it to be able to integrate with other systems? That was a big topic that came up. And at Hayylo, we've approached that in the way, say that a lot of systems out there today are on-premise systems, like, they're installed on the customer's premise. But what we've seen is vendors, and Civica is one of them, one of the leaders in the space, where you've got your API set that can be plugged into that. And then from a Hayylo side, we can quite seamlessly integrate that together. The key thing that we saw as a barrier to integration was our customers' abilities to do the integration themselves. Have you guys seen that, Craig, with your customers?
Yes.
And how have you approached it?
Yes, and you learn along the way, we went and built our stack of APIs, and we said to our customers, "Here you go, off you go," sort of type thing. And what we quickly learned, and we probably should have known the depth of technical knowledge, project capability, all that sort of thing within our customer base is not high. They are providing an essential service to the market, to vulnerable people, and that's where they need to focus. Most of our customers don't run an IT department now. There still are some with substantial IT resources, but even with those substantial resources, they don't necessarily have that API interoperability capability. So we're finding that we've had to take a step back and say, what we need to do is, we can't just say, go and buy some middleware, go and do this. We've got to hold the hand, and we've got to provide the adapters and all the bits and pieces in there to make it easy for them. And they know what they want as an outcome from the process. They just don't know how to get there sometimes. So we certainly have learned that, and we're getting better at that. Yeah.
Sorry, Simon, go for it.
No, good. Look, that's just before we've got a question that came through that I think is quite timely to this part of the conversation. And Greg, feel free to circle back on this in a sec. But it's cool because it opens up something that I was thinking about, that conversation, Greg, or that concept around back office integration versus cloud-based infrastructure. And, we're seeing a rise in cyber attacks, in ransomware attacks, across the sector, seemingly because of, that struggling infrastructure, uplift into cloud, and for whatever other reasons, there's quite a few of them happening for different things around the sector. But, one of the things I was interested to ask you both is, why is the sector, and I think, Craig, you kind of talked some of it before around the focus for providers and where their focus lies day to day. But, why have we not seen that kind of occur, in a more timely manner? Do you think, is it the systemic kind of stuff, or what's stopping the sector from making those moves as collectively?
I'll take that up first, Greg, because I've been around for a while and I'm a bit older than you guys, and seen a lot of
you, Craig.
seen a lot happening in this market, and there's a number of reasons here. Underinvestment, turnover of management and staff is just chronic in the industry. Talk about people turning over 25 to 30%, 33%, I think it is, type turnover. And so what we find is people have great ideas, and they once again, they know what they want as the outcome, but they just don't have the experience, the resources, and nor the capability to do some of the things that they're trying to do. So there's been a lot of failed projects in the past. The government's certainly not helped. There's been no investment. The funding in the market is gives people a small margin if they're a good operator, but it doesn't give them margin to reinvest in their infrastructure and their technology and all that sort of thing. So all these things have been prohibitive, but also it's just the healthcare market is not like your logistics market, not like your banking market. And yeah, we're talking about markets that have much bigger margins, but also they've had to adapt and innovate. Whereas healthcare, as long as people are still receiving the care, people have said that's good enough type thing. So it's been like that. It's changing now. You guys are fairly new to the market, but can see clearly that things have changed. We've been around for a long time, and they have changed a lot in the last 2 or 3 years.
They really have. Like, we could feel it, right, Greg? Like, we've felt that shift especially over the last 2 to 3 years. Craig, you had a little bit of a darker time the few years before that. But what about you? What about you, Craig? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know what? Everything that you said, Craig, I resonate with. The other part of it, which is exactly a byproduct of that, is that if you think about it, the vast majority of global healthcare data has been created in the last 4 years, like the data itself, like in totality. So, when you think about like the chicken and the egg, and you think about what's, there's a whole bunch of data here now, like customers are collecting it themselves. I'm sure all of us on this call and the audience here, we're all collecting health data. I looked at my phone the other day and it told me my walking asymmetry. And aside from the fact that I didn't actually know what that meant initially, it talks about how even my steps are. Yeah. And that's just become something in my mind now. And I've just got, it's data. So I guess those two things together have also pushed vendors. So Civica, Hayylo, everyone else in the market to say, we've actually got, with the transformation to cloud, we've all got new tools. We've all got new tools where we can do things differently, more efficiently, in cool ways that were harder and more expensive to do previously. So from a Hayylo perspective, one way we showcase this is, so for example, an integration with, say, one of your customers, Craig, the integration takes a couple of weeks. And exactly going back to the previous comment, and I think to the question that was raised is, we as a vendor take on the responsibility to do the integration end to end, to do it, to implement it, and then subsequently to manage it. And we do that with all of our Civica partnership customers as well. The reason for that is because, Craig, you said it so well. Our customers want an outcome. The detail is the detail, and that's why they work with groups like us on the communication side, and other groups like Civica on the care management side. So we go all the way, and we try to do it very quickly. And the tools and the move to cloud has really enabled us and everyone else in the market to think about how we want to do things faster, better, using automations and using intelligence that's out there today. So that's kind of what we're seeing at the moment. So we would love everyone to be more down the path on their cloud journey for reasons that it helps them scale their own business. Because I think as a sector, we're dealing with the scale topic at the moment, scaling the workforce, scaling to meet the demands of customers, scaling to meet the changing demands, as you were saying, Craig, of clients. They're changing. Maybe 5 years ago, there wasn't an expectation to be as forthcoming with all of the information you said around healthcare, but now it's changing. We've got groups in peripheral markets like HotDoc, who give you reminders on your GP appointments. That's really changed the way that we look at all of this information. And so interoperability ends up becoming a massive part of it. Like, it is for us, a lot of the cool stuff that I spend most of my nights thinking about is not the stuff that you see when you use Hayylo. It's the stuff that sits behind the scenes. It's all that stuff that makes it all work, because interoperability is an awesome end goal, but there's a few key pieces. It's like a language. to exchange any kind of information, you need a common language, right? And one of the things that I see as a really interesting point is standards. You know, for such a long time, you know, we've had in healthcare, we've had standards in information exchange, but there's ambiguity in them too. So I think the thing that we see when we're working like with vendors like Civica and your team, Craig, is that as opposed to reinventing the wheel from the ground up, building out all these standards, we take more of a common sense approach, which is we label things the right way, we give them real meaning, we expose things that make sense, and we allow people to kind of interact with them. So interoperability, I think in kind of totality is really important. As you said, Craig, there is no one solution to do everything. The best in breed approach is here and now. And we can really take advantage of it because of the government's changing the way they're doing things, allowing more access, taking a digital first approach, albeit slowly, but really moving in that direction. The vendors and the market is following suit, and the clients are demanding more. So we're needing to share more information. So I think all of those things together really create a good, perfect storm for us as vendors, and our responsibilities to help clients do more with their clients. Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things too, Greg, is it's the way to go, but the government's got a long way to go to understand that they can't just change things on a dime. You know, when everything is linked up and talking to each other. And you know, a good example is the improved payment arrangements. Got to be changed by the 1st of September. And at this stage, the Medicare Online is not fully up and operational, but when it is, they can't just make that decision and expect all of us sudden these flows of information to continue if they're dubbing those on. So there's a whole range of things there the government's got to learn if they want interoperability, which they do. Then it comes at a price of making sure that major changes, which IPA is, are done properly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And Greg, and Craig, I've got a question that's come through that I think is probably a good segue at the moment around this subject, because we've kind of touched on, the infrastructure. We've touched a little bit on, the providers getting, the barrier for the providers around connecting the dots and the data, so to speak. And also now we, between our two organizations, we've had the ability to do that work together to connect our two platforms. And one of the things I was reading in preparation for this session is, one of the biggest issues around interoperability is really that standardization of the data from each platform, and being able to get those standards to work on our platform and also on the Civica CareLink platform. And then so we got a question from the panel, which I think is perfectly positioned around this. And thank you, Zebra, for the question. It is, how easy is it for a software provider to use, say, Hayylo or Civica CareLink to integrate their data into other software providers? Now, so this is an interesting one where we're going, okay, well, then how do we open that ecosystem up a little bit more? We've had to work collectively together, to get that to run between our two platforms. But how, as a sector and as vendors, do we widen it so people can plug and play, so to speak? So the question ends with, what is the process to make this happen? Like, where do you guys see we are today around that? We're doing some great work collectively, but that real open sharing of information across vendors, across government departments, we're not there yet. What are your thoughts on that? Maybe Craig to start with.
Yeah, and I think standards, as Greg said, helps. Not just helps; it is essential. FHIR is what most people are working with now around the healthcare market, and that helps to make it an easier process to integrate the products. And I know that once our BA teams were up and talking, it wasn't a major, the gaps were closed pretty quickly. And once we closed the gaps, we were able to implement smoothly at the customers we've implemented it now. And so I think that if it's open, it's written down and people understand what they're dealing with, it's a fairly easy process.
Can you just call that out, or before you go, Greg, just dig that FHIR? What's, just for those of us that isn't has an understanding of that framework? What's the FHIR framework for API? Is it for APIs?
Yes, it's for APIs and it's for healthcare. So it's I've been told it's not a standard per se. It's an approach, and so it's certainly a way of at least identifying particular fields, so that there's a standard understanding of those fields, and you certainly program your APIs to these standards, to these fields, which then gives you effectively a standard to work off.
That's awesome. We just got someone very, very kindly dropped into the comments section. Thank you, Francis. The fast healthcare interoperability resources. So that's for anyone join us, that information's there, which is great. But Greg, what about you? So is it, speaking to another software provider that wants to tap into Hayylo, that wants to use that data, wants to provide that to their communities, how do you approach that or think about that?
Yeah, so typically what we've seen, and we see it with all of our customers and the platforms that they work, it's usually driven by the provider and the customer. So for example, initially in the early days of Hayylo, what happened was we were working with a provider and they went to their version of Civica, as an example, said, hey, please work with Hayylo to integrate. And then that creates a pathway that you can then replicate. That's kind of how it starts. Whereas on the Hayylo side, we sit in a very different place than Craig, your team specifically. We sit outside the walls of the office. We're in the community. We're in front of the customers, in front of the family members, in front of all of them. And the part that's scary for us about that is exactly what I mentioned before. It is all of this technology that's coming out now. It's all enablers. And we're getting ready for, and a storm is a strong word, but we're getting ready for the demand curve to increase, where people say, you know what, I want this to be part of my picture for person-centered care. I want you to think about this. A really cool example is preferences, and this is just we see this all over the place. It's like that typical scenario where you might call your telephone company and you'll call them once and you'll put a complaint in, or you'll have a question. Then you'll call again and the second person won't know what the first person said, that topic. I'm sure we've all been through that when negotiating a utility bill or something like that, right? When I think about person-centered care and more about the outcomes, I'm thinking, how do we make that experience better for the customer? How do we make sure that information is captured somewhere? It is. How do we make sure that family member's got it? Or Bob up the road, when he visits, he's got the right context, because not only can it reduce anxiety around the kind of interaction itself, meeting with someone and, not being unsure about what to talk about, it can also go a long way in providing like continuity around, hey, you did this yesterday, I can help with this. So interoperability is very important, from being able to gather that information and bring it together and surface it in the right way. So the more and more we step into the future, we have demands placed on us continuously, where we have clients saying, hey, I'd like this to be part of the picture of me. And that's kind of how we look at it at Hayylo. What forms the best picture of the client for themselves, for their family, the community, and the providers that are helping them. So we're driven by that. We're really driven to do that. And to successfully do that, we are going to be moving towards a more open kind of set of APIs that other tools can plug into. It's just a natural part of the evolution. I think the evolution of interoperability has gone, flat file transfer, some APIs, private APIs, open APIs. It's evolving as all the software changes. Cloud transformation will play a big role in all of that, because essentially helps for it to be in the cloud, so we don't have to install things. But that's all happening. So I think that vendors that want to work and integrate with other vendors, and we said this back in 2018, and we really meant it, is that we have to have these conversations, and after the conversations, we have to quickly work together with vendors to open up the pathways for opportunities to work together. So Craig, you and I met a number of years ago, and we started the conversation back then, where we realized that there was a an area, an opportunity where we could exchange ideas for the benefit of our collective customers. So I think those conversations are really good, and it doesn't have to be super massive, and we don't have to recreate the wheel, like coming up with a new HL7 standard or anything like that. What we do need to do is North Star objective. What are the client outcomes? The execution team below, vendors are a part of that. What do we do together to achieve that in the best interest of the customer? Because that provides all of us with longevity and prosperity and good client outcomes.
Yeah, awesome. And so this is awesome. We're gonna. There's another kind of cool, great question that leads into this a little bit more from Jimmy has put this through, and it is interesting, Greg and Craig, because yes, that seems to be what is required for groups to work together. There's been definitely apprehension, which is something I want to kind of dig into a little bit, from some vendors around, staying in each other's lanes and crossover of, IP and those kind of things, and not wanting to play nice, and it's been something that we've really had to navigate for a while. And so when we think about limitation or apprehension, there's the question here is, Jimmy's just said that their business needs to access the NDIA data, which is kind of going to lead me into the next part of this webinar today. The NDIA API suites call rates. So, the velocity in which they can call the other platform or the NDIA to access that data is what they were talking about here, and not sufficient to provide the data that we require at the same speed or faster than the existing process. So currently a manual flat file download. How can we push the increase of these limitations of APIs that are out of our control, so that we can take advantage of them? And I think I kind of go from you, because it's kind of going back to that conversation around, yeah, cool, the API's there now, but now it's down to the speed in which we can do the calls. And as Greg was saying, this evolution of APIs, so to speak. What does that friend Jimmy do here? For someone that's trying to access this stuff, but it's not going to fulfill their needs. What can they do?
Yeah, so fortunately we were in the beta testing around those APIs for the NDIA with one of our particular customers, and so fully aware of back to the NDIA to basically give them that feedback around the APIs. It's all baby steps at this stage. Just take a step back and think of what it's taken to get to this point of having APIs with the NDIA. So for us, it's been a no-brainer, and it's going to provide so many benefits to our customers, so many efficiencies to our customers. And I assume that Jimmy's talking about the bulk claiming primarily through the manual file. You might just have to do that a little bit longer, but all the other benefits from the interoperability of data with the NDIA is going to be of so much benefit to our customers. So it is feedback, patience, but also realize where we've come from, to get to this point.
Yeah, I like that. Craig, did you want to extend? I've got some great questions that I can keep flowing here, but did you want to comment on that, or do you want me to keep?
Just the other part of it is, like, I view us as the vendors, and exactly what Craig was mentioning is we've got a responsibility to give that feedback back to the agencies, being technology vendors that are in the space working in it and really gaining that feedback. It's never one email that changes the world, but it's the more in which we can provide that feedback and the benefits of it. We're always advocates of that. So something that we do is we always try to channel that back as we can, as close to Canberra as possible, when we can, in those conversations, because it's in all of our interests that stuff works so much better. But I definitely agree with what Craig's saying. It's slow steps. It's come a million miles. I was even looking at, when the NDIS was first launched, and the difference between where we are today. Yes, it's come a long way. Yes, the private sector and adjacent markets have moved and leapfrogged in so fast in many other different ways. And that really sets a high bar, especially as software vendors, because we're looking at the likes of the Microsofts, the Slacks of the world, and we're looking at what they're doing and the speed at which they're innovating. I'm optimistic that things are going to go, that's going to be enhanced. That Craig, we've got workarounds in there at the moment to help customers and guidance. We always do that as well. And then hopeful for its expansion into other areas like my aged care. And I'm hopeful that that'll all become more elegant over time. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. The NDIA is probably ahead, not probably is ahead of the Medicare and the aged care space at this point. So you're right. The service providers can see all the efficiencies and all the things that they want to get there quickly because they have a business to run. But the NDIA is slightly ahead. Very protective of their information, and I'm going to give my little plug to a seminar I'm going to do in the near future around cybersecurity. Data protection is something that people have got to worry about, the Privacy Act, all that sort of thing. So we can push as quickly as you like, but we can't breach those areas, and we can't make data vulnerable as we go along. So there's going to be that level of stop-start while we make sure that we get that right. But the service providers have seen the benefits. They've seen the new world. It'll take a little bit of time for the agencies to catch up.
Great. Awesome. Craig, I want to come back to that point around data privacy with a little story and then capture your insights in a second. But before we move into that space, because I think it's an interesting part of, the end user's privacy and willingness to access and share data. But before we get there, one great point and then a cool question that I thought we'd bring up, and it would really, Deb, thank you for the comment. It's exactly what we were kind of alluding to before. One of the major reasons interoperability doesn't happen is because many software providers in the healthcare industry see each other as competitors and want to build everything themselves, which means they're not in a hurry to integrate. Any thoughts on that, gents, just quickly before I move into the next question?
Craig, I'll give that to you first.
Yeah, no worries on that one. And that's the history. That's history, and there's still an element of it in the market, but that's how everyone approached the market: proprietary, and it's now proven that it's not the best way to go, and you'll be left in the dust if you continue to follow that process. So the market's changing. There's still a lot of people who are head stuck in the sand, but it is history now.
Yeah,
awesome, great.
Well, look, we built our company on the back that you can do this, on the back of the fact that you can work with the other vendors. Definitely agree. What we're seeing is, I think it's the reality of creating something so big and being very disciplined in each of the areas each of the key areas that platform provides. For example, you could have a team of 100 just working on messaging, like as a function in your platform, and you like, what is the context of those conversations? There is just so much in there. So it's the best in breed approach is what we're looking at now, and that's gonna the underlying requirement to even approach that for our sector is that things talk to each other. So I definitely agree. Yes, we're seeing. I'm kind of seeing a lot less of, hey, we're going to do all of that now, but it is there. It has been there. But a cool way that we're looking at it is the likes of the relationship that we have with you guys, Craig. We work together. That's a very open relationship. We work very closely with your teams on our combined customers and the value we want to place into the market. That says to me that the future is really bright. The future will advance a lot faster with this kind of momentum.
Our partnerships are future, and these sorts of things. If you try to build everything out, if you try to be all things to all people, you won't. Nothing will be delivered on time. Things will be moved on, and you'll become irrelevant in the market.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a good question that's come through from the audience here. Francis is asking, okay, so does the future of interoperability have middleware platforms playing a big part, or is it in these partnerships? Like, where for a provider, and we know we work with some with middleware, we know that we have directs with the partnerships with you guys. What does the future hold as far as that space is concerned? Will we see the rise of middleware platforms? Will it be in the partnerships like ours? What do you think, Greg? Let's start with you.
Okay. I think we will see a rise in middleware. So middleware is becoming, and I'm going to use this term lightly, more point and click. Right? It is becoming. Actually, a good way to describe it is low code. That's kind of what the new world is. However, it all comes down to ability. You still need to know how to use it. You still need to license it, and they're not cheap, easy platforms to manage in and amongst themselves. And that's just, so middleware, for in case everyone wants to know, is the part of the integration workflow that fetches data, transforms it, orchestrates it, and makes sure that there wasn't a real need for a common language between the two, but you can exchange information. It maps it essentially and does a few things. Do we see the short and mid-term future, like a couple of years? I don't see providers around the country being able to mobilize, purchase, scale up development teams and middleware platforms. I don't really see it. I think the responsibility is on partnerships like ours, and to really help with that and almost provide a turnkey solution where it says, hey, this is Civica, this is Civica with Hayylo, and vice versa. So I think that I'm placing a lot of responsibility on us to really do that for our collective customers in the market. That's kind of what I see in the midterm. Craig, what do you see?
Middleware is really big end of town still. You know, it's like setting up, and I used SAP as an example earlier. And unless you're a big end in town, you can never use SAP, basically. So you know, the middleware is a lot like that as well. I think it's our obligation, because our market is a lot of smaller operators, is to provide that turnkey solution. And not have them going out and purchasing an expensive piece of middleware that may not end up working. I talked about turnover of staff, project capability, all that.
Yeah.
And it becomes a white elephant. So I think it's, you know, we may end up for some bigger customers having to work with a solution, but I think a turnkey solution for this part of the market, for aged care, for disability, those areas, I think is the right thing.
Yeah, you know what? We laid down a challenge the other day internally, actually a couple of weeks ago. It was, how do we get the connection of these two platforms, it all set up in 2 days? That was the challenge. Still working on that. But the point of it is like, how do we reduce the complexity and the effort for our customers so much that it becomes exactly that, Craig. It becomes turnkey, because the more elegant it is to put in, the more elegant it is to use, the more buy-in we've got from the teams that are going to use it. It just starts it off in a really good way. So we're going to keep investing in this particular relationship because it's valuable to our customers. Yeah.
Cool.
I noticed, Simon, a couple of questions coming through the Q&A there from George. Hello, George. George is well known to everyone in the aged care industry.
Perfect. Let me find the Q&A. Oh, he did too, George. Hello. Nice to nice to hear from you. Let's get into those, and then there's 2 other little sections that I'd like to dig into if we have time. So George has asked, you know, what level of interoperability do we need in aged care? Is document sharing and secure messaging enough? And maybe we could start there. You know, will those 2 kind of elements be enough to fill the gap, or is there more that we need to do?
Do you want me to start? I'll start and say I don't think that's enough. You know, I think that you know, that's an important part of the market, but for the true efficiencies, you know, and let's use aged care as the example here. And with all these 80,000 new HCPs, home care packages that are out there now, and lots of things, it's all lovely, but the distribution of those packages and lots of things is still very inefficient. And you know, those sorts of things should be part of the distribution of information through interoperability.
Okay. Agree.
Greg.
Yeah, I agree. The future that we need is to enable real innovation from groups like the vendors, the edges of the network, the fringes that are really doing some crazy, super innovative things. Access, it leads to empowerment. So allowing people to shape the data and present it in different ways, not just for messaging, but for other things. So as an example, I got a phone call this week where a customer was still doing mass amounts of flat file generation, transformation, then re-uploading into a new number of other systems internally on a fortnightly basis. So, you know, billing is a big topic, right? This is a big topic. hands down, is probably worth a whole webinar in itself in the different subsectors that we all operate in. I just think that the integration capabilities and interoperabilities that we want to see for everyone for client outcomes needs to be a really rich data set. And so, yeah, I think there's more work in that space. Yeah.
Awesome. And George is posting another great question, which I'm going to get to. And if George is
on a roll. George is on a roll now.
I'm just calling him out, George. We're going to get you on. We're going to get you on for one of the webinars, and we're going to pick up this chat again, because I think we could deep dive into this with you. But George brings up another great point. Like, what can industry bodies do to support vendors, implementing interoperability into their systems? Like, and like what more can be done from the sector peripherally to help drive these kind of conversations? Is it just education and communication? What industry bodies do, to help shift this conversation?
Yeah, the industry bodies have definitely got a piece to play, part to play in this, and I think everyone's aware I'm on the MSIA, and the board there, and we see interoperability and how we progress it in the market as one of our key principles. So I don't have the magical answer, and George's been around long enough, and that's why he posed the question, because there's no magical answer. But I know that he's been involved with ACI, ITC, and all that sort of thing, and we've done it. There's been numerous papers written. There's been there's various lobbying going on. In the healthcare industry, it requires the government, because as I said, the government's so omnipresent in this market that it requires the government to be front and center on this, and be the key stakeholder in this process.
Yeah, because George asked the other question, how do we stage this in? How do we actually get this? George said, I was hoping you guys would solve all the problems. Give us some time, George. We're going to get to them eventually. But Greg, your response before I want to take this out of the back office, and I want to jump into the community to finish this off a little bit. But what about you, Greg? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of fear around the complexity around interoperability, approaching it. Should we do it? We still hear in the market some sentiment around, I don't want to join these systems together. I would prefer there was one thing that did everything. It kind of says to me that there's more widely showcasing good stories is important, and doing that at not for the benefits of the vendors involved, but for the benefits of illustrating to the wider market, the peer organizations, that there are cool ways to do things underpinned by really high-tech stuff. But when it's implemented, it's easy. And a really cool example is one of our longest running integrations is years old and requires almost no maintenance at all. And it's been really helpful. The purpose of me mentioning that is you can have really great integration and interoperability stories. It's the outcomes that give us the real story, but there's good stories that can evolve and withstand a changing landscape. So, working with vendors that get it is important, and keeping those vendors accountable to our ultimate outcomes is really key. That's how we tend to respond well to that.
Yeah, and I think off the back of that, Greg, too, it's also the service providers have got to buy the vendors that are the software from vendors that are heading in the right direction too. That's the way you put it. And that somewhat it's not the magical one that George is talking about, but it's. If you keep on investing in organisations that are proprietary and not interested in interoperability, then the malaise will continue. But if you've got people like ourselves who are interested, who are API first and interested, then the overwhelming market position will be everyone wants to share their data. And I know someone put a message up there rather than a question. It was just a chat that the Department of Health is now promoting that sort of thing, which is that's from George's organisation, from the MSIA and the vendors and everyone pushing that up. They're now going, oh yes, we can see that clearly there's an appetite for it. So now we agree, but they don't have necessarily the answer. the key thing is they've got to keep on showing that they're interested and not reverting back to PDFs and moving things around like that. You know, they should be API first and lots of things, and then eventually it'll just be like logistics, like banking. That's it's just the norm.
Yeah, I like that. And thank you, Janine, for that comment. That it is, you know, that things are changing. There has been that acknowledgement for sure, and that is starting to have some downstream effects on vendors like ours as well. But Greg, comments on that before I shift, because one of the questions I was going to ask you guys today, and maybe we'll finish off on it, and I'll backtrack a little bit. But I wanted to dig in a little bit more into, you know, what should providers be asking their vendors, you know, or prospective vendors around, you know, and we might finish on that question. So let me take a step back, but just think about that a little bit. You know, what are some tactical advice we can finish off the webinar today for providers to take away when selecting any kind of a tech vendor around this conversation. But before we get into that, so just let that stew for a moment. So, and I just wanted to share a little bit of a story as a segue into this. So I was in New South Wales, first time I've got out of Victoria, other than one little trip recently. It was a green zone. The day I was flying out, switched to an orange zone. So as I got back, went and got my test, and then isolated for the day, or 24 or 48 hours, super quick response as well, which was great. I got it back COVID free, which is fantastic. But as I was standing in line and filling out the form, obviously all of those things go through your mind as a consumer. You know, where is this data going? Who gets access to it? Are they stealing my DNA? You know, all of the conspiracy stuff that kind of comes out, or whatever else, you know, for a consumer that really doesn't know where this data is going and who's potentially going to get access to it. It was actually asking me through the sign up of getting the test is, would you like this data held with your My Health record? And I have My Health record. I'm pretty open with my data sharing, you know, but I said no, because the information provided to me through that experience, through that sign up experience, didn't really make me feel like I knew what was happening. It kind of, I didn't exactly know how that would be used, how I could access that. I haven't used the My Health data since I've said yes to having the My Health data set up for myself. So I was just wondering, you know, when you think, and we've experienced this as well, as far as provider to consumer, to the end users, with their apprehension to share data, to provide data. To lead into the last section, you know, what should providers think about? Or, you know, what's important to think about when trying to entice the user, because without the data from the end user, this is a pointless conversation in some respects. So, you know, what should providers think about in that space around enabling their communities to share, to feel safe about, you know, you can even see with the contact tracing stuff that's going on at the moment, how we've had police departments start to access that for criminal behavior. You know, there is definitely a cloud of uncertainty in the community at the moment around the sharing of health data. How do we approach that? How do you guys think about that as a concept? Craig, maybe for you to start.
Privacy Act, and just making sure that your vendors, if you're looking at a vendor, if they're unaware or not don't have an appropriate answer to how they comply with the Privacy Act, then don't go there. So it's not the be and end all, but that's a starting point for people in terms of the data. Obviously, with the recent cyber attacks and things like that, you know, people are worried about you know, what sort of cybersecurity you got, and all these sorts of things are questions that are worthwhile asking. And it's at the end of the day, how safe is my data with the vendor? You know, and that vendor may be on, you know, Azure, maybe on AWS, maybe on whatever. That's not the answer, really. You know, the answer, yes, it may be on those, but what level of protection do I have, even though the data's sitting on those platforms, which are supposedly very secure?
Yeah, great. And what about you, Craig? What are your thoughts as we see this evolve over the world? You see what's going on at the moment between, you know, Apple and Facebook around, you know, data security and access to different information to drive different functionality across platforms and tools. You know, where does your mind go when we bring up this conversation?
Yeah, so many places. So number one, to the first part of your question, which is you sharing your data with the My Healthcare record, right? So an example is through the entire history of Hayylo, which is short, but since 2016, and there are tens of thousands of customers that use our core platform, elderly customers in the community. There have been 5 in total that have questioned something like, why is the app asking me for access to my camera? That's the number. The reason I wanted to picture that is because those are questions that should be asked in a higher velocity, but it's all about informing customers along the way, giving them the insights at those points, and we do that very specifically through the platform. That's number one. The second thing is the general behavior for consumers and people, and I'm sure all of us here sign up to websites, and when I mean sign up, we interact with websites that you really don't know what the backing is. And I'm literally in the middle of working out some kind of rogue transaction from Amazon at the moment. I was doing it earlier today. You don't know. You don't know what's out there, and cloud has obviously spiraled that up as well. And so all of the things that Craig was talking about are like definitely on the recipe book for when you're interacting with the vendor. The second part of it is, and this is what I think Civica do really well, is if you're coming back to the interoperability component, you're thinking about a vendor and you're working with them and you want to make sure that whatever next step you're taking, maybe won't future-proof you forever, but it's going to get you a long way through a lot of the unknowns, and then the unknowns will become known later, is can you integrate? Yes. If you start hearing the word flat files, take a moment and think about that. Ask them how much more seamlessly they could make it for you. And going back to the question that came up, ask them, are there limitations, velocity limitations? Asking those kind of questions is helpful. Above and beyond the security, all that core stuff that Craig was talking about, there's some other real things that are needed to make sure that your outcomes are delivered. And that's why when I think about all the customers that we work with, they all come from different abilities. They all have different abilities in terms of being able to ask these questions. So step through your business outcome with the vendor or vendors that you're working with. Step through it with them. Ask them how to show you how it's going to be realized, how it's going to be operationalized, how your team members and then your clients may use it or be in receipt of it. At least at that level, you'll get a really good idea around, is this thing actually going to work? Operationally, functionally, is it going to deliver that outcome? And then, and ask your vendor for some of that hard-hitting information and prove to me that you guys are secure. Prove to me that you've done this before. Prove to me that you're solid. All good questions to ask and don't necessarily need to be technical of nature. Yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome, Greg. So guys, we are pretty much at time. I'm going to throw it to you both for kind of any last thoughts or reflections, and also happy to end it up. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. So maybe, Craig, any last thoughts? You were mentioning the cybersecurity webinar that's coming up. Do you have anything, anything that you wanted to share as far as what you guys are working on at the moment, where people can contact you guys? And happy to finish it up.
Well, people will be pleased to know that the NDI APIs will be out in the next couple of weeks. So that's one thing that's been brought up. So I thought I might mention that. Yes, I am doing a cybersecurity date to be published soon, but look out for that. I am hoping to have a special guest, one of our customers who might have had a cyber attack recently. So we might have them on. So keep an eye out for that. Yeah,
that'd be very interesting to hear, actually, from a provider side. That'd be awesome.
And that's it from me.
Awesome. And Greg, what about yourself? Any final thoughts? Anything that you wanted to share, or throw out to the audience?
Nothing. Like interoperability, it can be scary on the outside. It's going to become like bread and butter for our sector. Meaning needed infrastructure, just part of the equation. So fold it into your thinking, and you can actually have the best of all worlds now. It's really moved into that space with groups like Civica opening up their platform to allow it to do more things that you guys and providers around the country might need. It's a really cool time to think about that and to have good conversations with people like Craig about it, around what might be suitable, and the team at Civica, because yeah, there are good abilities now that are just going to get even better. Yeah, so exciting time.
That's awesome, Greg. Thank you so much. Craig, thank you so much. And for everybody that took a little bit of time out of their day to listen to the three of us dive into that, thank you so much for spending some time with us. And yeah, we'll see you next time for the next episode. And yeah, thank you both, gents. That was a really insightful conversation. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Awesome, guys. Take care.
Have a nice day, everyone.
Yeah, bye now.